The Ferryman. Ferryman stands apart from most entities in the Conjuring Universe because he doesn't behave like a typical demon. He isn't manipulative like Valak, and he doesn't obsess over tormenting a family the way Malthus does through Annabelle. Instead, he represents something older and more symbolic, a force tied to the passage between life and death. Inspired by the myth of Charon, the boatman of the underworld, the ferryman appears not to corrupt souls, but to collect them once they are already spiritually lost. In cases connected to him, the Warrens aren't dealing with a standard haunting. His presence signals that a situation has escalated beyond simple possession. Lorraine senses that he operates under a kind of cosmic order, almost like a dark enforcer of spiritual law. That's what makes him so unsettling. He doesn't taunt or bargain. He arrives when a soul is on the brink of damnation, as if performing a grim duty. Visually, he manifests as a tall, hooded, corpse-like figure with hollow eyes and a still, deliberate presence. There's often a feeling of damp air or mist around him, reinforcing the idea of crossing into another realm. Traditional exorcism doesn't affect him in the usual way, because he isn't trying to inhabit a body. He's there to escort what's already been claimed. Within the Conjuring Universe, the Ferryman expands the mythology beyond haunted objects and demons into something more existential. He suggests there's a structured afterlife system, and that sometimes even the Warrens are fighting against inevitability itself.
Malthus, Annabelle. Malthus is the true demonic force attached to the Annabelle doll, and unlike the innocent identity it pretends to have, it is never a human spirit. The name Annabelle Higgins is simply a disguise, a manipulation tactic used to gain sympathy and permission to enter a home. In the Conjuring Universe, demons require invitation to establish attachment, and Malthus exploits that rule perfectly. Before the doll ends up in the Warren artifact room, Malthus terrorizes multiple families, gradually escalating from subtle movements and written messages to violent physical attacks. Lorraine Warren quickly realizes the presence is inhuman. Through her clairvoyance, she senses something ancient and predatory hiding behind the doll's harmless appearance. Ed confirms through church consultation that it's a demon seeking a human soul, not just attention or fear. What makes Malthus especially dangerous is its patience. It isolates victims psychologically, creates vivid hallucinations, and manipulates emotions before striking. When it briefly escapes containment during the events surrounding the Warren home, it influences other cursed objects, proving it's intelligent and strategic. Its true form is monstrous, dark, horned, and skeletal, a stark contrast to the porcelain doll it uses as camouflage. Within the Conjuring Universe, Malthus represents one of the Warrens' most dangerous captured entities. Annabelle isn't just haunted, it's a prison, and Malthus is always waiting for another chance to claim a soul.
Valak, the Nun. Valak is arguably the most iconic and recurring demon in the Conjuring Universe, but what makes this entity so terrifying isn't just its appearance, it's its strategy. Unlike Malthus, who hides behind a doll, Valak disguises itself as a demonic nun, twisting one of the most sacred religious symbols into something horrifying. The choice isn't random. Valak specifically takes that form to psychologically attack Lorraine Warren's faith, knowing that doubt is more powerful than brute force. The demon's origins trace back to a cloistered abbey in Romania, where it was summoned through a forbidden ritual and temporarily sealed away by the church. A relic containing the blood of Christ was used to keep it confined, but during World War II, bombings damaged the abbey and allowed Valak to escape. From there, it begins orchestrating events that eventually draw the Warrens into its path. When Ed and Lorraine encounter Valak during the Enfield poltergeist case, Lorraine begins having visions of the nun long before understanding what it is. Valak isn't just haunting a location, it's targeting her directly. It shows her distorted visions of Ed's death, attempting to weaken her resolve and break her spiritually. That psychological warfare is Valak's greatest weapon. It doesn't just attack bodies, it attacks belief. the demon demonstrates immense power: teleportation, reality distortion, physical attacks, levitation, and the ability to manipulate other spirits. It can appear silently in the background, blending into shadows before striking. And, unlike many demons, Valak plays a long game. It sets plans in motion years in advance, orchestrating chaos that spans multiple films. Eventually, Lorraine confronts the demon by speaking its true name, weakening its hold and forcing it back. But even then, Valak's presence lingers, tying directly into the larger mythology of the Warrens' most dangerous cases. Within the Conjuring Universe, Valak isn't just another demon, it's the Warrens' most personal enemy. It represents corrupted faith, spiritual manipulation, and the terrifying idea that evil doesn't always attack head-on. Sometimes it smiles behind a holy veil.
La Llorona. In The Curse of La Llorona is reimagined from the famous Mexican legend into a powerful child-hunting spirit within the Conjuring Universe. The folklore tells of a woman named Maria in Mexico who, after being abandoned by her husband, drowned her 2 sons in a river out of rage and heartbreak. Overcome with guilt, she drowned herself as well. Denied entry into heaven, she was cursed to wander the earth, eternally searching for her lost children, weeping as she goes, earning the name the Weeping Woman. In the Conjuring Universe, her grief has turned into something far more sinister. She doesn't just mourn her children, she tries to replace them. La Llorona stalks families and targets young children, marking them with a burning handprint before attempting to drown them, mirroring her original crime. Water is her signature element, and many of her attacks involve bathtubs, rain, or flooding spaces. She appears in a flowing white gown and veil, her face sometimes beautiful and sorrowful, other times decayed and skeletal with dark, hollow eyes and black tears streaming down her cheeks. She moves unnaturally, gliding through shadows, appearing in mirrors, and materializing silently behind her victims. Her abilities include invisibility, teleportation, superhuman strength, and environmental manipulation. She can only be harmed by properly blessed objects used with genuine faith. Unlike demonic entities tied to occult rituals, La Llorona operates independently. She is a cursed soul, not a summoned demon. What makes her especially terrifying is that she is driven by obsession, not chaos. She believes the children she takes belong to her. And while she can be temporarily stopped, she is never truly destroyed. Like the legend itself, she endures, forever wandering, forever weeping, forever searching for children to claim as her own.
Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba Sherman is one of the most sinister human-turned-entity figures in the Conjuring Universe, rooted in the events of the Perron family haunting. Unlike primordial demons such as Valak, Bathsheba was once a living woman in 19th century Rhode Island. According to the film's lore, she was accused of being a witch after the mysterious death of her infant child, whom she was suspected of sacrificing to the devil. Before taking her own life, she allegedly cursed anyone who would take her land, dedicating her soul to Satan. Whether every historical detail is accurate or not, within the Conjuring universe, that curse becomes very real. By the time Ed and Lorraine Warren are called to investigate the Perron farmhouse, Bathsheba's spirit has already deeply infested the property. What makes her particularly dangerous is her obsession with motherhood. She targets Carolyn Perron specifically, attempting to possess her and force her to kill her own children, mirroring the accusation tied to Bathsheba's own past. That psychological parallel adds a disturbing layer. It's not random violence, it's symbolic corruption. Bathsheba's abilities are intense even by Conjuring standards. She can fully possess a host, manipulate the physical environment, cause bodily harm, and appear in grotesque, decayed form. During the climax, she exerts enough control over Carolyn to nearly carry out murder in front of witnesses, showing that her power isn't subtle, it's overwhelming. Unlike spirits that simply haunt, Bathsheba dominates. When the Warrens confront her, Lorraine uses her clairvoyance to understand Bathsheba's history and spiritual weakness. The exorcism is chaotic and dangerous, pushing Ed to perform a rite without full church authorization. It's one of the earliest examples in the universe of the Warrens risking everything in direct spiritual combat. Bathsheba represents something chilling within the Conjuring mythology, not an ancient demon from another realm, but a human who willingly aligned with dark forces and became something worse after death. Her story grounds the universe in the idea that evil doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it begins with a choice.
Isla Kastner. Isla Kastner appears in The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, as the hidden architect behind the film's satanic curse, making her one of the most calculating human villains in the Conjuring universe. Unlike typical grieving or manipulated characters, Isla is a former disciple of a powerful occultist priest and willingly embraces dark ritualistic practices. After witnessing her father's obsession with demonology and forbidden rites, she adopts and refines his work, becoming a methodical occultist who orchestrates demonic possessions through carefully constructed satanic altars. Her motivation is rooted in trauma and resentment. Following her father's suicide after his exposure and disgrace, Isla blames the world, and indirectly the Warrens, for the collapse of her family. Rather than abandoning the occult, she deepens her involvement, dedicating herself to completing a ritual that requires a series of curses placed upon specific victims. By creating totems and blood sacrifices, she forms a satanic network that links victims together, compelling demonic entities to possess them and drive them to commit murder. The possession of young David Glatzel and the subsequent suffering of Arn Johnson are direct results of her ritual design. Unlike demonic entities such as Valak or Bathsheba, Isla has no supernatural powers of her own. Her power lies in knowledge, precision, and devotion to dark forces. She understands how to summon and bind demons through sigils, human sacrifice, and occult symbology. However, the forces she manipulates are not fully under her control. As her ritual nears completion, the demonic presence begins to physically and psychologically affect her, causing erratic behavior and visible deterioration, suggesting that even a devoted occultist is ultimately expendable to the entity she serves. In the climax, Lorraine Warren confronts Isla within the underground tunnels beneath her home, where the final altar is hidden. When Lorraine destroys the altar, the demonic entity turns on Isla, violently killing her in a brutal act of retribution. Her death reinforces a core theme of the film. Those who attempt to command demonic forces inevitably become their victims. Isla Kastner stands out in the Conjuring universe as a true occult mastermind, someone who doesn't stumble into evil, but deliberately chooses it, believing she can control what was never meant to be controlled. The Crooked Man. The Crooked Man is one of the most visually surreal entities in the Conjuring universe, emerging during the Enfield poltergeist case. Unlike demons rooted in ancient religion, this figure originates from something deceptively innocent, a children's nursery rhyme. That's what makes him so disturbing. He takes a piece of childhood imagination and twists it into a predatory manifestation. The entity first appears through Janet Hodgson's experiences, initially presenting itself through a toy and a sing-song rhyme about a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. What seems playful quickly turns nightmarish. The Crooked Man materializes as a tall, impossibly contorted figure with elongated limbs, a twisted spine, and a jerking, puppet-like way of moving. His body bends at unnatural angles, almost as if he's folding in on himself. The design makes him feel unstable, like reality itself is warping around him. As the Warrens investigate, it becomes clear that the Crooked Man isn't acting independently. He is a manifestation used by Valak to intensify the haunting and create fear within the Hodgson household. That's an important distinction. While terrifying, he functions more like a weapon than a mastermind. His purpose is psychological escalation. By targeting Janet through a familiar rhyme, the entity blurs the line between imagination and possession, making it harder for outsiders to believe the case is genuine. The Crooked Man demonstrates physical strength, environmental manipulation, and the ability to shift between shadow and full form. During his confrontation with Ed, he moves with inhuman speed and elasticity, forcing a direct physical struggle. Yet once Valak's influence is confronted and its true name spoken, the Crooked Man's presence collapses, revealing that he was never the true source of power. Within the Conjuring Universe, the Crooked Man represents how major demons like Valak weaponize fear itself. He's not just a monster under the bed, he's proof that in this universe, even childhood stories can become gateways for something far darker.
The Bride. The Bride appears in Annabelle Comes Home as one of the many cursed entities locked inside the Warrens' artifact room, and she stands out as one of the most visually haunting spirits in the Conjuring universe. Unlike major antagonists such as Annabelle or Valak, the Bride doesn't drive the central plot, but her presence expands the universe's lore by showing just how many tormented spirits the Warrens have contained over the years. The Bride is believed to be the spirit of a young woman who died on or around her wedding day. While the film never gives a full backstory, supplementary material and context suggest she took her own life after being abandoned at the altar or suffering betrayal, leaving her spirit bound to her wedding dress. That dress becomes her anchor object, displayed in the artifact room under strict containment. As with many cursed objects in the Warrens' collection, the item isn't haunted by a harmless ghost. It acts as a conduit for a deeply disturbed spirit replaying the emotional trauma of her final moments. Visually, the Bride is pale, corpse-like, and dressed in a vintage white wedding gown with a long veil. Her skin appears bluish and lifeless, her eyes hollow and glassy. When she moves, it's slow and unnatural, her veil shifting to partially obscure her face before revealing her deathly expression. The bridal imagery contrasts innocence and celebration with decay and sorrow, turning what should symbolize joy into something deeply unsettling. Her abilities are typical of a Class A haunting within the Conjuring universe. She can manifest physically, appear and disappear at will, move unnaturally, and create environmental disturbances. During the chaos unleashed by Annabelle, she stalks the teenagers inside the Warren home, appearing in dark hallways and confined spaces, using psychological terror more than brute force. She doesn't speak or roar. Her silence and stillness make her presence more unnerving. The Bride represents a recurring theme in the Conjuring universe, intense emotional trauma binding a soul to a physical object. While demons like Valak operate with calculated malice, spirits like the Bride are trapped in loops of despair. She is not shown to have a grand agenda. She is a fragment of unresolved tragedy, awakened when Annabelle releases the evil sealed within the room. Though her screen time is limited, the Bride reinforces how dangerous the Warrens' collection truly is. Each object in that room carries a story of suffering, and the Bride's one is of love turned to devastation, forever walking the aisle but never reaching the altar.